Welcome to the Change Within podcast. We are a platform about change and how we embrace it to our community at large. My name is Gerard Uselli. We are on episode 7, and it's been a very exciting journey to ensure that we are communicating with so many people all across the world. As we've already had 2 stops in Staten Island, we have finally got ourselves to the Bronx with a very exceptional guest. Her name is April Hernandez Castillo. April, how are you?
I'm fantastic. How are you?
I'm doing great, and I'm very thankful that you've come to our podcast and excited to have you here today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. This is a new way of life that we're living now.
Absolutely. And Zoom is just an understatement that just bears for itself, right?
Right. Oh, yes.
So I was curious. I've looked into you like throughout, and you've had a lot of accolades. You've also had a lot of experience to share with the world, and it's something that I commend you for. So to kind of take it all the steps back, what was your childhood like growing up?
Well, I grew up in the Bronx, 179th and Grand Concourse in Creston. And for those of you who have no idea where that is not too far away from Yankee Stadium. If you know the Bronx, then you know Yankee Stadium is a staple. So I'm not that far away from there. I grew up during the time known as the crack epidemic era in the 80s when crack unfortunately came and really decimated families and people. But what was most profound about that, while that was happening, something was being birthed, and that was known as hip hop. So I was born, I'm just going to say it, in one of the best boroughs.
Hmm.
And it is known as the home of hip hop. So it was really fantastic, despite everything that I just shared. There was a sense of community, there was a sense of family, there was a sense of just excitement. There was never any a boring time living in the Bronx during those times.
Absolutely. And kind of to your point, something I've noticed when I've looked at a lot of hip hop documentaries within the late 70s and early 80s, DJ Kool Herc was somebody who just completely not only revolutionized hip hop, but arguably the inventor of it. And just to
Mhm.
see documentary clips of people coming together in such collaborative ways, where even if people weren't like the best dancers or the best people to be rapping, there was such an inclusive way of inviting people to ensure that they're building each other up rather than raking each other to go down.
Right. And I think that's what hip hop back then. One of my friends, he's a legendary photographer named Joe Conzo, and he was coined by the New York Times Magazine as the man who captured hip hop's baby pictures. So he captured hip hop when it first started. And when he shares with us that the Bronx, and I mean, the hip hop was supposed to be a fad, that it wasn't supposed to last, that they didn't know what was hip hop, they were still figuring it out. And so you have like a Cool Herc, or you have a Melly Mel, who really were the founding fathers of all of this, that now it's a $1 billion industry and hip hop is worldwide. But it all really started out of a sense of unity between black and brown folks, because we just felt like we weren't being heard.
That could not be more true. And it always takes a group, a small group, or even 1 or 2 people to ensure that leadership starts with them. And that needs to be immersed to a community at large, because slowly but surely, word of mouth is still the most essential way of how you gravitate towards success, especially when you're trying to build a message.
Right, right. Yeah, I mean, what better way to unite people than music? You know,
Oh,
that's
I'll
why
say.
that's why hip hop is just so amazing, because it reaches the other side of the world, and you and I may not speak the same language, but music allows us to speak a universal language, and so that's why it's pretty amazing.
Speaking of that, so especially with you growing up, were there any hobbies, maybe even pertaining to hip hop, that led to you doing acting, or was it something out of the gate that you wanted to pursue?
Actually, no. When I was a child, I never thought of becoming an actor. I wasn't really surrounded by the arts per se. I really was more athletic. I played sports. I played softball. I played volleyball. My father, was a hardcore Yankee fan. And I think when you're Puerto Rican and you're born in the Bronx, it's sort of like you're just naturally, you don't really have a choice. You don't become a Mets fan if you're born in the Bronx. You just don't do that. So sports was heavy in my family, and I really thought, okay, maybe I'll have a calling, or I mean, I really really enjoyed sports. So when I went to Hunter College, I really was going to either study nutrition or athletic training. I wanted to be in that world, and fitness was always very important. And then I had to take a chemistry class, and I walked right out because I was
Oh my
like,
God, that's
I said,
great.
I don't do science. I was like, I don't do science. This pretty face does not do science. It was never, my strong suit, science nor math. And I ended up taking and discovering acting through an improv class. And it changed my life, obviously. And it was one of those moments where acting found me, is what I always tell people.
So I'm curious about this, especially you going into baseball when you were younger and doing a lot of like those types of activities. Is there kind of like a Yankees player that you and your family have related to the most? Like, was there somebody you've always talked about within the house that's kind of like this person is the legend in
Oh,
quotation?
yeah. Oh, absolutely. That would be Paul O'Neill.
Oh boy, nice.
Paul O'Neill. So I played all outfield. Now, typically, you don't see short people playing all outfield because, you need to be tall to. But I was very, very fast. I was extremely athletic, so I had speed, and I played all positions. I played right, left, center. I always preferred either left or center because right sometimes was just too boring. But it was his intensity. It was his love for the game, how he really just, I mean, like, he was a team player. And there was just, when he would get mad and just start breaking things, it was a little dramatic, but you did feel like, wow, that's how much he cares. One about winning and one about just doing the best that he could. So I would emulate that, and I had to calm my temper down a couple of times.
Would you consider yourself the most competitive from your family, or am I asking such a redundant question where you know it's going to be yes?
Uh, hmm. My father is extremely competitive, so I guess that's where I get it from. I mean, he has like all the athleticism in his body, so it's just when we're playing, whether that's bowling, whatever it is, we're always competing against one another.
Oh, that's very good though, because that also instills a sense between like the people you look up to, especially within your parents, and
Right.
then seeing how that competitive nature can be passed down. There's always a way of structure about how that can be passed down to your family too.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, I see it in my daughter. I see how competitive she can be, but not in a like ego driven way. It's just like she likes to win, and she once she learns something, she wants to get it right. So I dig it. I dig it that I can see that in an 8-year-old little girl. It's pretty cool.
And to that point, it's always nice to have a platform for yourself to understand where you are in your life and ensuring that you're able to give something better to somebody, especially like your children, than
Right.
what you've initially had. And for somebody like you who's dealt with a lot of trauma growing up, how did you realize that you needed to change your surroundings to supersede?
Well, I always knew if I was going to succeed, leaving the Bronx eventually was going to have to happen. Although I still live in the Bronx, but my careers have taken me all over the United States and internationally. And it's just, you just know, I mean, as an actor, New York City is the place, right? So the arts is somewhere. If you want to succeed, it's either California, LA, or New York. And I'm glad that I didn't leave right away to go to LA to pursue acting, because everyone in town is an actor. And I had great people telling me, like, just wait for your moment. Once that moment comes, you'll know. And they were right. They were right in saying that. And so I left there. I left when I was supposed to leave. And I think I was like maybe 20, 25 when I
That's a good
finally,
age.
yeah, I feel like, yeah, and that was my first time living alone. That was my first time ever. I didn't listen. I went to LA. I had no car and I had no license. And if you've ever been to LA, getting around with no car, no license almost feels impossible. But the New Yorker in me, you figure it out. And so I figured it out.
Well, you were definitely the Google Maps as far as you getting yourself to LA. You were probably a nice guidance point to even people who live there.
Listen, this is before the GPS and I was using MapQuest. So yeah, I'm dating myself. I feel really old right now, but I was using MapQuest and driving bare knuckle and looking at the paper, and it was a hot mess. So I'm so happy that we have the phone now.
To that point, it's funny because my first job going out of school, I was doing recruiting for the American Cancer Society, and this was still in the final days of MapQuest. And just to even understand my shortcuts, I just got my license at 22. Of course, you don't really know where you're going if you're trying to like get a shortcut around Staten Island because
Right.
there's so many you don't know which one to take. So for me, I've had to print out my MapQuest to just get around to different meeting spots because my schedule was changing every day. So I definitely understand that. And for that one, we're both dated.
Yeah. I have the worst sense of direction. I don't know. Like I can remember, I have a very good memory of if I'm on the highway and if I see something, I have like photographic memory. But don't ask me, what's meet me northeast, and I'm gonna just be like, listen. Hopefully you find me.
There we go. And in that realm of it, you were able to find more of a direction within your acting career as you went out to LA, because ranging from Freedom Riders to 30 Rock, Law and Order, and Dexter, what has
Right.
been your biggest technique to embrace all those types of roles?
When you mean technique, what do you mean by that? Like,
Sure. So, by technique is what are some ways to kind of like build your confidence as far as how you get yourself immersed within any role that you want to do?
oh, that's it's just about doing the work. It's about finding, everyone has a different approach in how they go after a role. I don't really consider myself a method actor in the sense of or I don't even think I've had the ability just yet to fully become like method, where you just live and breathe that character all day and you never leave it. But I just feel like with every new role, there's just something new to learn. I do my best to not judge the character that I'm playing. That's not my that's not my job. My job is you become like this detective as an actor, and you begin putting pieces together and creating a story other than what's on the paper. So usually that's how I like to approach a role.
That's a good point because as you gain more experience, and this speaks to anybody who does have experience in what they're pursuing, you do kind of puzzle your pieces together to ensure that you're building a landscape that people can relate to you on, knowing that they have to follow your lead as you build your accreditation.
Correct. Definitely.
So, and a final question on the acting. Do you miss acting at all? I know you've moved on to more like motivational speaking, but how have you been like engaged in the acting world? Have you done like roles once in a while and things of that sort?
I mean, I'm always an actor. I will always be an actor. I think these days, you can no longer just be one thing. That's just not the world that we are living in anymore. I think maybe 10 years ago you could still just be an actor, but if listen, you get older, things change, but that doesn't mean that you don't have a story to tell. So I'm always going to be an actor. I'm a creative, I'm an entertainer. Um, whether that's writing, whether that's speaking, to me, the speaking is no different than the acting. I see it as theater. So that is where I get to have more fun, more excitement, because I look at it as theater, where you really get to connect with the audience and take them on a journey and storytelling, and I do characters. So I feel like I've never left, maybe shifted, but I've never left. And just last year I was on New Amsterdam, and then the pandemic hit. So it's been slow getting back to it, but I'll get back.
I know you will too. And kind of like within that realm of acting, especially when you did your TED talk about transparency, how did you
Mhm.
come about in creating that narrative to build towards an audience to speak to?
Specifically to the TEDx.
Yes.
Well, I mean, as a speaker, most speakers dream of doing a TEDx or being on a TEDx stage. There's just a level of prestige, and you know that anyone who's been on that stage has done the work, and they're doing the work, and they understand um, the concept that they're really talking about. So that's, I think that was always years in the making. You just have to know that you're fully ready for that. And trying to do a speech or give a speech in 18 minutes is work. Although there are shorter ones, 5 to 6 minutes, which really is amazing. But you know, becoming a mother and struggling with motherhood, I felt like what better way to really get my message out there than a TEDx.
Do you feel like when you did that TED talk and getting to that accolade in your life, did you have that correlation that this is something you wanted to pursue as like not I guess like a full-time thing, but also as a new feat within your life?
Yeah, like I said, I didn't mention it, but I've been speaking for over 10 years. So it's a natural progression. And then you just figure out, okay, where do I go? How do I continue inspiring and igniting people to just be a better human being? And I think that social media allows us to get out our message to thousands of people in one click, you know, one post, one video. It's exciting. It's exciting, but
With
there's
that
nothing
being
like,
said, what I'm
yeah.
curious about with you is when you've released like videos over time, was there ever one video that you released where it was kind of like, I don't know what I'm going to expect of it, but why not? I'll do it anyway. And then you're just like blown away by the result.
Right. I don't think it was a video. I think it was a post that I made at like the ending of the year, and I shared on LinkedIn about my mental health. And I was a bit apprehensive because I was like, well, I don't know if people really talk about this or should I share it? And the amount of people that commented, you know, sent me DMs expressing that they too were suffering in their mental health and they didn't know how they could express it on a platform like LinkedIn. It was just like, yeah, wow, this is great. It was the best thing ever. And so I'm when you're talking about your brand and who you are, more people want to know about just you in the human side, and then whatever else you're selling, it's just a added bonus.
Could
So
not
that
agree
was, I
more with
think, the
that.
most surprising. Yeah, I think that was the most surprising. I was a bit nervous, but it worked out.
And with the regard of the circumstances in your life, one of them being domestic violence and how you've shared that story throughout the years, do you feel like specifically with the youth that you've been kind of perceived as a mentor to them? Do you feel like you get a lot of those DMs that you were talking about, like from a younger demographic?
Definitely. I think it's important that kids have mentors. I mean, I have so many. I've had amazing mentors guide me in my life. So I understand the capacity, I understand the heaviness, and the role that you can play in someone's life. And so when I speak to these kids, I can't say like I mentor all of them because there's thousands of kids that I've spoken to. But when I get to just really connect on a personal level and stay connected as much as possible, and I always tell the kids, if you reach out to me on social media, I'll make sure to stay connected and keep you updated. And they do, and they really appreciate it when they know that someone cares.
Absolutely. I could not agree more with that as well. And also, as far as like kind of fast forwarding to quarantine in the current state, how has that changed your life as a mother? And what's one positive that you value in a world filled with confusion and negativity?
Oh, okay. Well, the pandemic, I think, hit everyone differently. For some people, it made them just stop and really focus and saying, wow, what are the things that I need to change in my life? Because I think we live in such a busy world. I think also the pandemic forced people to look within and to really say, wow, there's some things that I've run away from. I think if you are a creative, it has forced you to really say, how can I create something out of all this chaos? And so that's what I was able to do with my new book, Embracing Me. And I really just channeled the warrior inside of me to fully commit to writing during a time where the unknown was every day. And I just kept saying, no matter what, a pandemic doesn't stop your purpose. A pandemic is not going to stop your calling from doing things. So that's how I was able to channel it, and that was the most positive thing that came out of it, was me writing my book.
With that being said on your book, so another thing I'm curious about is when you've mentioned about your mentorship and the people that have like harnessed you over the years as far as helping you out, developing your talent, when you share like your content, even your book with people, who do you think between all your mentors is your toughest critic?
Me.
You think it really like goes back to yourself more than anyone?
Oh yeah, without, I mean, I the thing is, I set myself up around people who don't BS me. I don't have the time to have people give me fluff. I made sure that I worked really, really hard, but I think at the end of the day, my biggest critic will always be myself, and probably my husband, who keeps it very, in street terms, 100 with me.
There we go. I see the emoji in your eyes on that one.
He just keeps it 100, and it's and thank God that I have that.
Absolutely. And ultimately, as a final question for what 2021 can hopefully bring and how the change within for your future could be, what inspires you to be a better person tomorrow?
Hmm. Definitely my family. I truly believe my husband, my two daughters, they really just inspire me to constantly push forward, create, be the best version that I can be. My daughter, she's looking at me, she's looking up at me, and I'm trying to really set a standard for her, where she understands no matter how tough things are, we are tougher, and that where there's a will, there's a way. And if you really want something, then you have to do the work. And that really is, that just pushes me all the time. Whenever I feel like I'm want to give up or just be like I'm done, I look at her and I say, I just can't do that.
Speaking of which, on LinkedIn, one of your daughters got like a bit of an acting opportunity. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Right. Once again, this was a blessing that came from the ending of 2020, and it was just being there at the right place, right time. And so she booked an animation for PBS called Alma's Way, and it will be coming out in the fall. So she's the voice, she's the leading voice of the character of the girl, and it's based about a family who lives in the Bronx, and she's Puerto Rican. And it's beautiful because it's about thoughtfulness, it's about building self-confidence, it's about diversity and inclusion, all created in the Bronx, which really gets me excited.
Does she remind you of yourself as an actor growing up?
It's terrifying how much she is a lot like me, but it's also pretty cool because when you look at a human being who resembles you physically, but also has a lot of your DNA and just a lot of drive, my daughter's very driven. It reminds me of how I used to be and how I still am.
Absolutely. And with that being said, that concludes our seventh episode of the Change Within podcast. For those who don't know and have watched this episode, please find us on Anchor, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. April, again, thank you very much for being on the Change Within, and again, all the best wishes for what 2021 brings to you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Have a great night.
You as well.
Bye-bye.